We must take shelter. The future of both man and feline kind hangs in the balance here.
Really? Is this true? Isha, my friend?
Your Holiness!
That angel may very well be the ray of hope that answers our prayers. Will you tell me more about this man? I'm quite curious.
All right, this thing is now recording, and I got to turn my fan on because it gets overheated sometimes. So I'm using a gaming laptop.
Ah, okay.
It still works. So, all right, I guess we can get this thing started. So nice to have here. I'm Phil, host of the Conversation Podcast. I have a special guest with me tonight. So, introduce yourself. Who's Jacob Shultz I'm speaking to this Wednesday evening?
This is Jacob Shultz that you're speaking to this Wednesday evening. Hello, my name is Jacob Shultz. I am a German-American voice actor, currently based out here in Dallas, Texas. You might have heard my voice in a few characters such as the Pope in No Longer Allowed in Another World, Hinode Sunrise in Nyaight of the Living Cat, as well as Harmon Andrews in Anne Shirley. But I've also done a lot of background work for popular shows such as Fire Force, My Hero Academia, and I even did that kind of Temu discount Winter Soldier in My Hero Academia Vigilantes. And I'm just really excited to be here.
Nice to have you here, man. I know we're halfway through the week, but even halfway through the way, there's some amazing stuff that's happening.
Yeah. I mean, we're almost there, It's kind of that mentality. You just got to make it to Friday, and then we start this whole week all over again.
That's how life is, right?
I guess so.
So now, before we get into this, I want to start with a little bit of an icebreaker.
All right.
So here's a question I got for you. I got a question. Who's like your favorite rock band that you've listened to?
My favorite rock band I've listened to? Well, if we direct the attention to the chest, it is, of course, the classic Van Halen band, which was debuted back in 1978 with their debut album titled Van Halen 1. The reason I love Van Halen is because my dad kind of put me onto it like at a very early age. He plays a lot of guitar in his free time, and I think he recently helped out with some bands too, just kind of small stuff. But it wasn't until recently in life that I've grown this new appreciation for guitar and the Van Halen band in general. It was during around the Christmas season where I decided to go back home to Florida to visit my family, and I decided to drive a whole 16 hours in one go, no stops, no rests. And of course, my family looked at me like I was crazy. But Spotify recommended this kind of audiobook-esque thing, and it's called Unchained, the Van Halen story. And I thought, my dad loves Van Halen. I remember listening to a lot of the songs, Stay Frosty still remains one of my favorites. And, I'm hearing about this story, and, it just kind of inspires me to, get back into listening to as much of the songs as possible. And then I'm listening to this stuff and I'm like, oh my God, this stuff is awesome. And, learning about Eddie has also given me a lot of inspiration for how I go about bringing about my creativity. He has a lot of quotes that I live by. And I always think my favorite one is, if you want to be famous, run naked down the street, you'll make the news. But if you want to make doing what you love your livelihood, play, and the things you'll want to happen will happen. And I thought, oh my God, that's what I need.
That's amazing, man. Hey, if you listen to rock music and it inspires you to do great things, man, I say go for it. It works. I think of my favorite one was back in the day. I have to say AC/DC. Still like their kind of stuff.
Oh, that's classic. I do love a lot more of the rock bands. I think my favorites are, Van Halen, the recent one, Mammoth, which is done by Eddie's son, but also a bunch of other bands like Motley Crue, ZZ Top, and of course AC/DC and Black Sabbath. And I actually saw Motley Crue's going on tour again recently, and I'm like, this is my chance.
Hey, I hope you catch him at one of your shows, man. I can't wait to see what you do.
I do. I hope so too. I mean, I went to my first ever concert recently when Mammoth was doing the end tour, and my friends would talk about how awesome concerts were, but I just never had the interest to do one. And then I went, and I'm like, this is amazing.
Sweet, that's sweet. All right, so now that we're done with the icebreaker, let's go ahead. So the way I've done this, there's 20 questions, and there's 5 sections for each question. So it's going to be good. I also got some deep dive questions for you as well.
Oh, that's really my favorite.
To really get you thinking.
Oh boy.
So let's start with section 1, the origin story and background. Now, if I got this right, you wanted to do stand-up comedy. Do I have that correct?
You do have that correct. You did your homework.
Okay. You started out doing stand-up after high school. What originally pushed you onto a stage for the first time?
So what got me onto the stand-up stage for the first time was, again, around Christmas. My parents signed me up for a stand-up comedy class in Florida. It was SAC Comedy Lab, which was the place that Wayne Brady trained at. And so they signed me up for like this 8-week course. Well, it's like 9 weeks, but there's a break into it. And at the end of the course, you get to do a 5-minute showcase, which is essentially, you got an opening comedian, and then they go through the students, which I was a part of, and then a headliner. And so I wanted, because I kept telling my parents, hey, I want to do stand-up, because we watch stand-up specials all the time. I mean, we must have watched like Sebastian Maniscalco, like the same special 5 times in a week, and so yeah, I just kind of did those classes, and eventually at the end of the week we got to the showcase, and I come out on the stage, and I'm a little bit nervous, obviously, but the way my mom describes it is that she has never seen me more confident or more alive in her entire life, because before that I was a mumbler. I was a mumbler. I was a very quiet kid. Yeah, I would barely talk to anyone. And, doing this stand-up comedy stuff, it kind of started to crack me out of my shell. And, eventually after that, I would just go to coffee shops and bars and, perform a few times. And I think what really kind of gave me the confidence I have now is bombing at a coffee shop. Because there's no faster way to confidence than bombing in front of like 20 people who are not laughing at anything you're saying. Like, it's probably the closest I've ever been to being set on fire, but it did instill like this great feeling of confidence. It's like, okay, so nothing else that's going to come at me can hurt me nearly this bad.
Okay. Yeah, because I know like sometimes, and I've learned this too about seeing a few comedy. I think do you know who comedian Godfrey is by any chance? I don't know if you're familiar with that name.
I love that guy.
Yeah, comedian guy. Sometimes he likes to express, I know some comedians would like to express themselves and their emotions when they're doing comedic stand-up. I've been seeing a few comedy shows on Instagram where it's like, okay, so they tell a lot of funny jokes and everything, and that's their way of expressing how they do, like they're expressing yourself on stage. And I just started learning how that works like 2 years ago in 2023, right after I graduated from college. So yeah, I'm starting to understand like how these comedians, yourself included, how they express their feelings throughout all the shows they've done, so people can understand their perspectives.
It does bring a whole new perspective on, just kind of how you see things afterward. Because like I've started making a lot more jokes observation wise, like after doing stand-up or even quitting stand-up. I would love to do it again. But I think I passed by like a billboard that had the number. It's like one of those car accident lawyers, and the number was 1-800-GOT-HIT ? And I'm like, it's a bit on the nose, but all right. So I always think like I always do think that people should do stand up at least once or like look into it, because life is gloomy enough as it is. So why not try and find the humor in everyday mundane things? And I always think stand up, in my experience for it, giving me that skill.
Okay. Of course, definitely. I was gonna say, Jacob, you still I don't think I've seen any of your stuff. Do you still do the comedy stuff? Because I know you had the swap at some point.
Oh god, I haven't really been able to find the time because I've been like working overtime in my day job, doing voice acting classes and voice acting jobs, and it's also just really hard to find like a proper schedule, at least down here in Dallas, where clubs or bars would do open night. Because back in Florida, they had a website that would just list everything, but there's
Right.
not one for Dallas, so it's like I get distracted and I'm like, oh hey, microphone.
Well, it's okay. You got priorities. And listen, if it comes back to you, it'll come back to you when the time is right. So,
Yes.
so now you just focus on what you got to do for now.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, when did the switch from comedy to voice acting happen for you? And what moment made you take voiceover seriously?
Oh god, that's a really good question. So it was about after like a year of doing performances here and there at stand up where I kind of just like there was this void of needing to express some kind of creativity, and sitting down and writing my own stuff was excuse me, was kind of difficult at that time. And I remember thinking like, what should I do? So I messaged my sister asking, should I get into voice acting? Because I remember, we would play games. One of my favorite memories with my sister was playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 2. And, the end credits would, scroll and they'd say all the actors. And I remember saying to my sister when Chris Sabat got there and like he had like 50 characters, I just yelled out, who is Chris Sabat and why is he everything? And so, that memory kind of just popped back up. And, my sister was all for it. So around the beginning of 2022, I kind of just began kind of shopping around. And then I took a class with Richard Horvitz. It was my very first class around May of 2022. I had no idea what acting was. I had no idea that, there was this sort of whole artistic process. I had no idea that it's about like an expression of self, so to speak. And so, I remember, the first time I ever performed, he like gave me the script from the show Fish Hooks. And, I remember during like during the intermission, I just tried to do an impression of that character. And then, it's like, okay, that's good. But, think about this, think about the character, think about you, like, what do you want in this? And after getting through all those questions, I performed it and I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Because it just felt so freeing. And then I remember my dad saying, I don't think I've ever heard you have as much fun in there as, when you were in that closet, just practicing voice acting or just doing classes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make this a thing. But probably the moment I took it seriously was I did like, stupidly enough, ignorant of me, I did like 2 auditions, not getting anything back. And I'm like, oh, this ain't for me. But then I hear about the news of Billy Kometz passing away, God bless his soul. And, I remember driving in the car, listening to his performance as the 6-eared macaque and just, how much just talent, how much power he puts behind it. And I thought, he got to do what he loved. He got to do this kind of expression, he got to do this amazing art. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to pick up the axe. And then I signed up for my second class, and then more classes down the line, got like to do some audio dramas, little video game mods, original animation. And, kind of just took off from there where I started to take this thing a lot more seriously.
That's very interesting. I know that so basically I know every person has like a beginner where they started, and I'm guessing because I know so many people like for me, Jacob, my whole love for pop culture and everything actually started with Batman the Animated Series, and then so far and so on and so on. By the way, rest in peace, Kevin Conroy. He's my Batman. Speaking of him, I just got the Arkham City pop figure yesterday.
Oh yes.
So I just had to because I had to complete my collection. So now the Arkham trilogy is complete.
Yes.
So and guess what? Before you came on, I was actually playing Batman Arkham City before you got on.
That is like my childhood game right there. Like I remember playing that almost every time I get back home from like school, or just like, hey, I'm bored, I might as well start a whole new run of Arkham City. And this time I won't punch the penguin in the beginning, but this time I will. But it was one of my favorite games.
It'll always be one of the favorites. It's still popular today. But yeah, going back to you had to I think you just had to figure out, this is something I really wanted to do. Because I know most of us, there have been some incidences where people talk about imposter syndrome. And that's been a thing. I think I spoke to Kira Buckland 2 weeks ago. And very amazing and sweet lady. She's been doing this since the 1980s. So she actually wrote she actually did an article talking about imposter syndrome, because I know most voice actors will have that and feel like, is this something I really want to do? It's not me. I don't know if you've seen that article.
I have. I probably read it over 2 or 3 times. I'm like, is this shit normal? Damn it! But it is always a very interesting concept dealing with imposter syndrome, because for me it's always, am I really good enough to do this? Like, is it, am I a good person? Am I like a good actor? And it just kind of brings up all these questions to the point where you don't really believe people when they tell you, you're a good actor. And then that just kind of hurts you. And honestly, it should hurt them, because, because like a lot of teachers would say, it's like, oh, yeah, you're pretty good at this. You got a great amount of skill. And then something will just come along and, be like, oh, maybe they're lying. So I always do think that dealing with imposter syndrome it's not impossible. It's difficult. But, that's just kind of one of the burdens and risks you kind of have to take. But that being said, if you ever deal with imposter syndrome, just, I always like to sit down, pray, just kind of breathe, reset your mind. I always find it through meditation or prayer. That is where I'm like my most relaxed. It's where my body just feels like it's being lifted up.
Mm-hmm. And I know most people who deal with that kind of stuff, they usually go to a therapist. They also go to therapy too, and it does help. And you just got like you said, just pray, sit down, just take a deep breath and see how it works out. I say if you do something new, just try to go say a quick prayer before you go in, and then you start doing it. If it turns out great, then you just keep doing it. Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I was like, yeah, therapy. I even did therapy for a long time, and I thought, like, the first time I did, I thought it's like, okay, so I have to like deal with these problems. Like, it has to be some kind of symbiotic thing the first time around, and it didn't really work. But the second time around, I just kind of just vented and let everything go, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel amazing. So let me be a testament to say that yes, therapy does work.
It does. And when I first started this whole thing back in June, let's see how it works out first. Because, like I said, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in media production and journalism back in college. So I saw how it turned out. After I posted my first clip of my first episode, it blew up to 1.8K views.
Nice.
As I was like, okay, I guess I better keep doing it.
Yeah.
Now you got so many people who are like, wants to have a conversation with me. Like I actually did one with another person. She's from the UK. We're at 23.2K views already.
Jeez.
Congrats. I mean, it's only been a week and I only posted the clip. We did a collaboration. I didn't expect to go up that far. Basically, she does like a lot of spicy content and everything. But I also told her, even if you're doing that stuff, instead of like showing skin all the time, there's still a stigma behind it on all those spicy websites.
Yeah, I mean, and even like in the current format that you're doing it, where it's like deep dive stuff, the deep dive stuff is really interesting. And I honestly think this is because I've heard a lot of different interviews from like different platforms, and I always like this one because you really do get down to like the meat and potatoes of it, and it's like so cool. And the fact that I'm even here, it's like awesome. I get to talk about art for a long time.
Oh, thanks, man. Listen, I try to keep my podcast as diverse as possible. Of course, I want to talk about anime, of course, but I want to talk about you guys' life experiences as well.
And I can tell you, all of us appreciate it. Don't worry.
Of course. That's what it is. Anything. Because even listen, at the end of the day, we're still human.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, that's what some people just don't understand about. But I'm here to tell y'all stories.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times I've always hear about fans kind of treating the actors as the character they portray. And I do think thanks to this kind of business, I finally get to see the human, or like I get to see more and more of the human. Because, it used to be when I would go to cons to meet the actors, I would either ask like anime questions or something. But now I go up to guests that like I know and just say it's like, hey, how's the car payment going? Or, we just talk about mundane stuff.
Yeah.
And I learn about a lot of these people, and, I learned about foods. I learned that a lot of people like bagels, which I'm like, and I tell them like, I don't know, I don't really have bagels too often. And they're like, what?
Interesting stuff. Yeah, and it's funny that it's nice that you mentioned that that part about fans just see the actors as just the character. When I saw that incident with Zach Engler back in August, and I was like y'all, they're still human. Like you can't be doing this kind of stuff. And I have to keep talking. I think some of the voice actors like my comment about that situation. I think I did a video about it. But I think they like that I respect you guys as well. I mean, listen, y'all already got enough on your hands just coming to conventions. But when somebody crosses a line, that's like y'all losing the trust in like the fans. Like me, I just want to meet and just have like a genuine conversation.
Yeah.
Fans who just like, oh, of course I want to still get my stuff signed because you've done this, but I still want to talk. But as I was telling them, like, I don't care if you voice Sonic, Mario, Batman, Superman, Deku, or Marvin the Martian. Like at the end of the day, these are just people. You gotta respect that. So, and it's kind of scary that they did that. I was like, why?
Yeah, I mean, especially since like you're supposed to be behind a table, and there's other people that want to meet you, and so it's like, I imagine he probably felt stuck, and I felt stuck in many ways in my life. I'm like, that would just make my skin crawl. It would be like lighting myself on fire 2.0, not the stand-up edition. But I mean, just it is always really appreciated when someone kind of sees an actor for the actor itself and like not the character.
Yeah, listen, and I had a discussion with one of the people. I just went to GameStop and got the pops and all that stuff. I had a conversation with one of the GameStop employees. He said, at the end of the day, they're just people just trying to put money on the table. That's all they're trying to do. That's all they're trying to do. Of course, you gotta go to all these awards and everything, go to these movie premieres. But you guys are just people who are just trying to just make money. You're just trying to be successful and live.
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to use a talent that, we've honed, and, for a medium that we all love and appreciate. We just, at the end of the day, we all love performing, and, it's an amazing feeling when I get to go inside of pretty much a big isolation chamber and, just get to play around with scenes.
Of course. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Whatever works for us, let's make sure, I think in the end, we just want to be successful. That's all we want.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, like, if you want to I want to make doing what I love my livelihood. So I will play, and play. Just as old Eddie Van Halen says.
Exactly. That's another old saying. Choose a job that you love and you never have to work a single day in your life.
Yeah. I used to not believe that adage, and then like I got a paycheck for doing voice acting for like the first time. I'm like, there's truth in this statement. And there's just like no better feeling than getting to perform, because I love performing. I used to bother the absolute crap out of my parents with like Jim Carrey impressions from The Mask, and they're like, Jacob, go to bed. It's like, we love you, but stop.
That's hilarious. Jim Carrey be Jim Carrey. So, that's all it is. So,
I quote him way too many times. I was playing Sea of Thieves recently with a friend, and we kind of crashed the boat into an island, and we both just go, like a glove.
That's crazy. That's funny, man. And guess what? Since you mentioned Richard Horvitz, that was going to be my next question for you.
Oh boy.
What a coincidence. You've talked about taking a class with Richard Horvitz. What was the biggest lesson from that experience that stuck with you? And I think you might already know the answer since you just talked about it.
Uh, I mean, the biggest lesson that I kind of got from that whole class was just, it's playing pretend. It's I think a lot of people make it seem like an overly complicated process, but at the end of the day, we're just playing pretend and playing pretend fully. And I used to do that in my room, when I was 12, pretending to be Batman. And I'm glad to report 10 years later, I'm still in my room pretending to be Batman. And not always behind a mic, which probably embarrasses people. But, just knowing that there's this freedom to, explore and, to portray characters and just have fun, and like having fun being the basis of it all, that is something I will never forget. I mean, I still have the printout Richard gave us from way back in 2022. It's in like a box, and that box holds up a monitor. So anytime I forget, like, it's like, why'd I do this? I look inside, play pretend fully. I'm like, oh, right. I love doing this.
Hey, gotta have something to great. Glad. Listen, every time you do something, listen. Learning is forever. Learning is forever. So I'm even learning stuff like every day. I'm learning how much research I'll be doing on everybody. I make sure to have that stuff in my notes. Like, I put everything in my notes so I have them with me. So that way I won't make the biggest mistake of not having the stuff in front of me when I start talking. But yeah, everything you do, you want to make sure you have one important lesson that you can pass on to someone else who may need it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, in the end of the day, I think that's why I recommend his class, or like any sort of video you can find on it, because it kind of takes this weight off of your chest, especially when you realize that, everyone says voice actors don't get the script ahead of time. And, that's true. So having that, like, kind of rest assured, this is pretty, simple in a way where it is not as stressing as one may think. And, at least doing the job itself. And so I always thank him for kind of opening me up to the freedom. And, I always thank other teachers for teaching me some kind of lesson that I still use to this day.
Okay, make sure you have it, man, because you may have kids at a later point and they want to know how to do this stuff. I've been, my parents been telling me you want to make sure you learn as much because you can pass it up to, like, when I have kids at some point. They'll know exactly what to do and how to handle themselves.
I mean, my dad always says, even if you don't make this work out, you're still going to learn from it. And that knowledge is powerful. And he said, I believe that, number one, I believe you can make this work. But even if you don't, you're going to be successful at whatever you land at. I mean, and I think that's just a lesson for everybody. We might not do what we think we want to do or what we think we're going to do, but it doesn't matter, like, what experience you decide to, like, take upon yourself. Like, for me in stand-up, I still learned something from that year of doing it, and there's still stuff I use to this day. So that's why I think, gathering experiences and trying out any sort of artistic form would be just nothing but beneficial for anyone.
Oh, definitely, of course, man, of course, always. Next up, number 4, moving from Florida to the DFW area for voice actor was a big jump. What was that transition like personally and creatively?
Oh boy, I mean, what's that like personally and creatively? Well, personally, it was a long drive, but also for personally, it kind of had to teach me how to, like, manage my own household. It taught me a lot about managing my own finances, because a lot of voice actors I know, they have roommates, or, they're all just rent one big house. I don't have any of that. I am just on my own, making money in a nice apartment, you can call it nice. And so that kind of taught me, be conservative with my money, think critically. And so, live frugally, kind of thing. I think I have a bit of an advantage because I don't really buy a lot of stuff. And as much as I would love to. A lot of stuff I have is either just gifts from my parents or just this one impulse buy that was like, well, I mean, I made extra today, looking back at the budget. But creatively, it opened up a lot more things for me because there was a lot more in-person classes and there was a lot of stuff down here that you don't get to see in Florida. And so, I would go to these awesome places. I went to like this bookstore, Kinokuniya, down in Carrollton, and there's just a lot of cool stuff. There's all these, figures, there's all these cool little artistic art books. I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And also like all the in-person classes, because, all the time classes are usually done over Zoom. And so I'm just kind of sitting in a closet to myself, essentially, and just kind of doing these classes. But actually being able to use your body in a physical space has helped me a lot creatively, because it allows me a bigger vessel to learn a lesson. And so I think the transition was tough at times, but I eventually kind of figured it out in a sense to where, now everything I'm doing here is a well-oiled moving machine, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I know sometimes, when we move to like different places, we got to learn how to adapt because you live on your own. I don't have nobody. And I know eventually with me, I'm going to have to get my own place at some point too. It's like, you have to figure out, you have to plan things out. You have to come up with a game plan. Like, what are you going to do when you get here? Make sure you have jobs lined up and ready to go. And just figure out how you're going to like manage the money situation. So far that the money situation got down, I'm just trying to make sure that I save as much as possible because you never know what's going to happen. Because I do have plans to travel next year, so I need to figure out how I'm going to manage all that stuff. But at least you have the chance to have more room. Because here's the thing, I know so many voice actors who have their own home studio.
Yeah,
they got their own home, like their own voice boxes, and which is really interesting and impressive. I got to say, I mean, I wish I could take a look at it and see what it looks like. But what you do?
I mean, I kind of just look at kind of because this is just sound blankets and then a regular blanket kind of crudely strung up. And I'm like, is it not impressive?
I mean, it looks impressive. I like it.
I like it too. I mean, this blanket is nice and soft.
Hey, I say customize the voice box if you can.
I mean, it is good to accessorize. I know people have like plushies and stuff in theirs. And I'm like, I have a nice little Pokemon Spiel plushie, and I'm like, maybe I should bring him in. And then I still have not brung him in, but you know what? He's out there still, and I'm still thinking about it. So,
I spoke to Mike Smith 3 weeks ago. He has like a lot of One Piece statues on his voice box stand. I was like, okay, so they can customize their voice, but it doesn't have to be like very professional. There's nothing need to be in there. Make it feel like it's your voice box.
Yeah, I used to have like custom lights kind of strung about of like LED lights where you can set the color, set the tone. And it just kept like falling off because it was attached to the PVC itself back when I had the PVC booth. And so I'm like, all right, fuck it, and just kind of took it down and replaced it with this old just desk lamp. And I don't know, I think I'm more of a function over form kind of guy, but I definitely should look at form a bit more.
Well, hey, if it works for you, it works for you, man. But yeah, you just you had to get used to moving out of the nest at some point, get your own place. Eventually, like I said, I got to do my own thing too. But as long as you have a game plan together, you know exactly how this is going to work, you'll be fine. Listen, don't move nowhere without having a plan first.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember just scrolling through apartments and taking snapshots, and when I came down here to visit one time, we were just going there looking at all the different payment stuff. It's like, okay, it's going to be rent's going to be this, there's these kind of amenities, then there's this. And so I mean, I'm still kind of doing that to this day because eventually I think I'll have to go to Los Angeles, so now I'm just doing a much bigger search. It's like, okay, there's this, I can make this much money doing this job, taxes affect this much. It's a big numbers game. It's like I'm doing a scene in Moneyball or something.
Yeah, man. Well, shoot, I might have to check out your voice battles one of these days, see what it looks like.
Well, it gets heated. If you like the colors black and gray, well, good news. We've got a lot of it with special guest appearance of blue tablecloth.
Okay. Oh boy, I'm excited, man. We're at the end of this section. Number 5. Who were some of your earliest creative influences growing up? I.e., comedy, animation, music, anything.
Oh god, I mean, now I got like one for each. I guess we can start with comedy first, since that was originally what I wanted to do. My favorite comedians were, number 1, Sebastian Maniscalco, because he's so vibrant and physical, and like the way he does stuff just brings a smile to my face every single time. Another one is Nate Bargatze, because he's kind of deadpan, but he also says really smart stuff in a dumb way. Because I remember he said, I think a joke was, he was walking down the street with his friend and he saw a turtle jump in the water, and he goes to his friends like, "You think when a turtle goes in the water, it goes like?" "Ugh." And then his friend says, "Well, they're cold-blooded, so I think it's just like a nice bath." And then he goes on to say, I called him the next day like, "Hey man, I'm sorry about that turtle comment. I don't know what I was thinking." But I think those two are probably number 1, or probably number 1 and 2.
Okay.
There's a lot more, I think. I think my favorite one is Dennis Miller. He's like a really old one, mostly because it's kind of the opposite of Nate Bargatze. He says smart stuff, but he says it in a way that you don't know what it means, but it sounds funny, so you're just gonna laugh anyway. And I always love his kind of ending quote on any rants, which I've kind of stolen, which was, of course, that's just my opinion. That could be wrong. Anyway, since acting was the next thing, actors. Obviously, we got Kevin Conroy, as Batman, because I grew up with the Arkham games. I remember when Arkham Knight came out and the game was downloading. I came out like, no one touched this shit till I play it first. It's like, you're not going to deny me anything. And I think the voice cast in Arkham City is probably my default like voice cast for any like Batman stuff. I love Troy Baker's Two-Face. Troy Baker's another good one.
Love Troy Baker.
Troy Baker's amazing. Another one I really find inspiration to is Travis Willingham. Probably because we have like similar voice types, and I'm like, oh my god, you get it.
That's interesting. It's interesting that you're naming Troy Baker Travis Williams, because this earlier today. I was just watching Avengers Assemble on Disney Plus. I was watching him try. I do want to talk to Travis Willingham and Laura Bailey at a later time. Laura Bailey's been doing this thing for, of course they're married now.
Yeah.
So see, you come to all these names, and I just watched some of the shows this morning. Interesting stuff. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I can gush about Travis Willingham all day, because I think he was among one of the many actors that like I started noticing his voice in like different things. Like, oh, this is the same guy. Because I mean, I played Lego Marvel Superheroes, and he's Thor in that one. And then next thing I know, I'm hearing him again in another show. And then I'm like hearing him in video games and stuff. I'm like, who is this guy? He's got a very nice, deep voice, and it's very soothing. It wants me to put it to bed. And so I always draw a lot of inspiration from him, because people say like, oh well, you got a deep voice, but I don't always hear it. So I'm like, no, I don't. Look, coworkers would make fun of me. I'd say like, hey, we gotta do this thing, and they go, hey, we gotta do this thing. I'm like, stop it! It's not true. More artistic inspirations for actors. Jade Saxton. I remember, watching a lot of anime with.
I just met her last weekend.
Oh, she's lovely.
I think you saw. Yeah. I was trying to have a conversation. I told her about vigilantes and everything. She's very sweet, but I think she's still shy sometimes. Sometimes when I like to get into conversations, I try my best. But yeah, she's a very sweet lady.
I mean, a lot of us are introverts. I can only think of a few people that are extroverts that I've seen like carry conversations in cons. Another inspiration, Rico Fajardo, is a good one. I remember
met
seeing
him twice.
I met him once. I remember seeing him at a con, and the people he was talking about Romeo and Juliet with the people in front of me, and he made times like, "Hey, sorry, just explaining a thing." I'm like, "Oh no, go on." It's kind of funny actually. That reminds me of like a story where in Holiday Matsuri, when Blue Lock was first coming out, he's the English voice of Isagi.
Mm-hmm.
I was in line to see him, and all these Blue Locker cosplays kind of come up cheering his name and like saying like, "Hey, kick a goal," and kicks the ball in, misses the first time, gets in the second time. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe I was around here to see that. And then I looked to Twitter and someone was recording that moment, and I just see myself in line just kind of looking confused. I'm like, oh great, I'm immortalized in the internet forever. How fun.
That must be exciting, man. Yeah, all of those people, man, they all got very influences. You have so many like current voice actors who are actually taking up mentors of the previous ones back in the 90s who did like Dragon Ball Z. I know a few voice actors and who have like mentors like Macy Ann Johnson's mentor is Monica Riel. So you have a few people, I spoke to Jack Broadbent like last week for the convention showed up. I think he was mentored by Ian Sinclair. So you got to have those like teacher moments because they have like so many stories to tell back in the good old days when it's like early days of voice acting, like at least the early 90s to 2000s.
Yeah, I think the person that I've taken private coaching with the most and who I kind of consider my mentor is Felicia Angeal. And, I remember coaching with her for the first time because Joel McDonald said, if I ever wanted to get back in the game, she's the person I'd go to. And so I'm like, all right, I'll try it out. And then I tried it out and I came out a whole different new actor. And like, it was just so, it was just such like a teaching moment. And so that's why if I ever find like any struggle or need any advice, I'll probably just ask her.
There you go. It works. Always go to those people. They'll tell you what you need to do.
So you need to get your right mind, boy.
Definitely. All right, so we made out the end of section 1. It was a good section 1, really good stuff in there. Yeah. Section 2, let's talk about the voice acting career and roles.
Oh boy.
So you nervous? You nervous?
Well, hey man, just fire away.
All right. I'll try to ease the blow for you.
Don't do it. No, hit me full force.
All right. You've played roles like the Pope in No Longer Allowed in Another World, and characters in Nyaight of the Living Cat. Which will challenge you the most and why?
But I think technically the Pope challenged me the most because it was the first time that I had to go back in for another character. And so, just kind of, and like I was doing bit parts, throughout the time. And at that point, it's kind of just, one and done. You don't see him again. Oh, that guy died. Okay. You don't have to worry about him for the rest of the month. And so I came back for the Pope and I'm like, oh, I got to remember how to do this. And so it was a bit of a challenge because, I was kind of frantically listening in and kind of saying, okay, that's how I did it. That was probably the mindset. And that was my first named role. So if there's like another character I would love to do again, I kind of hope we get a season 2 of No Longer Allowed because I would love another shot at him. So I'd probably say challenge-wise would be the Pope. But there's also like other characters where I've had to do an episode where he would appear in different scenes, such as Temu Winter Soldier or Clarence Sale Bucky Barnes and Vigilante, where of course he dies, but he's in different scenes, and so like you have to quickly shift mindsets. Like oh, it's like, oh, we're in a little shop. I'm like, oh, now I'm face to face with the guy that's going to become Stain. So Robert McCollum kills me in Vigilantes. Great. So I always think I always love those challenges though, because it forces me to learn, and I love learning, and so every session I've ever gone into, I walk out, learning a lesson and thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to adapt it into my acting going forward. This is how I'm going to change my process. So every time I do it, I come out better. I learn more about my instrument. I learn more about what information I need. What can I process? What do I need to look at while, doing the dubbing? And so I think the Pope was that good first step, and probably one of my favorite steps, because I remember my parents, saying like, you got to tell us about your work more. And, they're my parents, so they're like a lot older than me. And I said, I don't know if I can say I voiced the Pope in No Longer Allowed in Another World without getting some kind of follow-up question as to what that is. But I mean, yeah, I think the Pope was just kind of my first challenge. And after that, challenges seemed a lot less scary.
Oof. Well, hey, if you're getting big roles like that, because I know some of you, like, if you get like, hold on, if you get like a main character role, of course they're gonna make you pull out all the stuff to make you feel like this is what you need to do. I know I spoke to so many people before who would like to do research on the character and what they've done. Now, most of you guys don't do research, and that's totally understandable. Like sometimes y'all don't have time to research everything before y'all start recording. But the best thing is y'all just do the best y'all can to look at, okay, she does this and that. And then you try to do your best to put your personality in these characters.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I am the kind of actor that believes, number one, everything you need to properly portray a character will be there in the script, in the story on that page. And for me, I'm also very much a physical person. So I try to kind of look at that person's physical appearance and use their design as key. So, the Pope, for example, he had the godly-like robes, the long hair, he had closed eyes, and so, it kind of just gave him this nice little quality about him, And I remember like doing the first cue for the Pope, I couldn't see his face, and so I'm kind of just praying, it's like, can I see his face before I try? And like when they showed his face, I'm like, there's the motherfucker. And because I was a very physical actor that always used appearances and design as kind of a stepping stone for portrayal. Because if there's one thing I love, and if there's one thing that got me into voice acting at all, is my love of visual storytelling. And I think any good character will have like key aspects of their personality imprinted in their design. And so that's why for the Pope, he has very bright color scheme, he's got a very softness about him. And it's kind of funny because his Japanese actor is the Japanese actor for Dio in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And I'm like, that's a bit misleading, but you know what? We'll roll with it. Then I find out months later he's the bad guy in the series. He becomes a big antagonistic force, and I'm like, motherfucker.
I tell you, man, they got, every time they come with shows, they come up with very crazy comedy of errors in those recording sessions.
Yeah, I mean, I've always found myself voicing I always find out like a lot of people with, bass voices like me, Brad, Brad the Gareth, we always end up voicing some kind of antagonistic force. And so, when I first got the Pope, I'm like, oh, hey, maybe this will be a turnaround. And then I read the manga and he's a bad guy. I'm like, son of a bitch.
That's interesting stuff. I've been telling people I want to check out the recording sessions one of these days. See what you guys be doing in the series, but I don't know what the clearance I have to do to get in to check them out. But I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
Yeah, I mean, bridges need to be crossed eventually. But I always do like looking at because there's like behind the scenes stuff on YouTube and stuff, and I've always kind of looked at that. And there's like a behind the scenes stuff for One Piece and Fairy Tail, and I'm here to tell you, yeah, it's still pretty much like that.
Hey, it works.
And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's what I be telling people. They listen. You're gonna run into people who are absolutely purists. I was like, y'all, you know, when they did Batman Hush and they gave it a bad rating because it was like DCM, because Jason O'Mara, as Batman, and I was telling them, oh, you didn't like Jason O'Mara's Batman?
No, I liked his Batman. I just didn't like the story of the Hush. I love his Batman. I do love the DC animated movies. I just think like taking away, like giving Hush to the Riddler. I'm like, because I love Hush. I love Thomas Elliot. I love that whole dynamic, and I kind of just see that reveal. I'm like, no, this is dumb. Stop. Go away.
Okay, but yeah, I actually enjoyed. I didn't care what those people said. I mean, Hush was okay. I know, it was the Riddler at the end, but it was still worth watching. Like you said before, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. And then they went ahead and tried fixing it, and I'm like, no, yeah, just break it again. We'll fix it later.
Exactly. So up next, this next one is going to be interesting because you've done like so many additional voices, especially with I think you saw on my story that I said the war concludes this Saturday with My Hero Academia. So listen, I like putting those countdowns around. Can you blame if I'm a fan of stuff and I just like putting countdowns and reminding people?
No, I mean, I'd do that if number one, I remembered and knew how to, and number two, I'm like, guys, this is going to be the best thing ever. Grab the popcorn, sit on your ass, and watch it. Damn it! Because I remember reading that shit. I'm like, yes, this is what I needed.
Yeah, and I've been collecting a lot of My Hero stuff. I got the Pop figure and Shigaraki. I got those I got that last week before I even went to the convention. So I just had to get it with the show ending.
I mean, it is definitely going to be the end of an era, because I remember when that show first came out,
2016.
God, I was in high school. Jeez Louise.
I wasn't too. I was in high school too, man.
That's so yeah, I was young, and it's so weird to think that I did voices for season 6, so it's so weird to think about that. Like, I go from watching it and loving to dub to being in it, and I'm like, oh damn, it's kind of this nice little full circle moment that it always makes me really happy. And I always thank my sister for getting me into anime, because when I was young, she showed me Oran High School Host Club. And I'm like, this is good stuff. And you know what? It has Travis Willingham in it, so it's even better.
There you go. But yeah, going to the question, you've been doing a lot of additional voices in big shows like My Hero Academia, Windbreaker, and Moonlit Fantasy. Now, what's the art of dealing a small but memorable role?
The art of doing a small but memorable role. I think the art in it is just being in that moment. For me, I'm the kind of guy that doesn't really like talking about or bragging about what I do. I kind of just did role announcements because, everyone else is doing it. But, looking back on it, I think doing something small but memorable should be memorable to you. And, should be memorable to the self. That's a weird word to say. And so, when I was doing it, I kind of think like, this is fun, interacting with the director or the engineer, doing, this kind of stuff. It kind of just, to me, I wanted to make it memorable for myself more so than others. You're either an impressor or an expressor, as Richard Horvitz would say. And, I desire to be an expressor. So that's why I never really consider it small. I consider it a moment in time where I get to do what I love for any sort of period of time. And if no one gives a crap about what I do, fuck them. I'm just like, okay, I had fun doing this. So I never really see it as like small time. I do see it as memorable, but God, I just love doing this so much.
Of course. And listen, I've been telling people, like even if it's not a big role, it's still worth something. Like, people be telling me like, I don't know who this person is, and talking about like the voice actors, like the lower tier. I don't care if these guys are high tier, mid tier, or low tier. They're still voice actors with stories worth telling, and that's the part that pisses me off, Jacob. Like, y'all have like disregard for like the lower tier voice actors who are just in the show just for a few seconds, but they're still worth having their story shared.
Yeah, I mean, that I kind of somewhat prefer almost, kind of just doing small, but kind of new things. Because, like, if I was to do an episode of a show, this is a big hypothetical. If I was to do like a show where I did every episode, I would love to just, kind of be somewhat different every single time. Because, I get to live in a new moment, I get to live in a new character. And even if I only appear in the show once, I've always loved TV character actors like, Richard Kind, every time he would appear in the show, I'd be like, oh, that's him. And, because I would grow up watching TV shows like Psych or Leverage, both incredible good shows with a lot of actors I recognize. And so I always love just, being just being there, just being a part of the project, big or small. I just love what I do. And, whenever I hear people kind of like saying like, oh, this guy's a small time actor, I'm like, no, but that's an actor right there, motherfucker. That's a man right there. I've had lunch with that dude,
Exactly. And listen, you're gonna like this because if you remember that scene when All for One was fighting Hawks and Endeavor, called the season 7, episode 9, extras. In the comic books, there's always these annoying side characters that would annoy the villain.
Yeah.
And I was like, y'all, don't underestimate the side characters. I mean, did you see the way they were tag teaming All for One in that episode? Like, he was being overwhelmed.
Dude,
so
I was reading that.
I was like, "Oh, boy, are you want to say that again? Because they got you cornered."
Yeah,
it's the same thing with just like video games, voice acting, anything in general. Like when you get to Batman Arkham Knight, you have Batman as the main character because he's the main character in the main game.
Mm-hmm.
But in like those side missions, like Gun Runner, Riddler's Revenge, and then Robin, and later in the story mode, they're the side characters. But here's the thing. With Catwoman, but Nightwing and Robin, these side characters, they still have big roles to play. Catwoman helped Batman take down Riddler. Like, she got a good few hits in with Riddler.
Yeah.
Gun Runner, Nightwing, when they had to track down Penguin and get all of his weapon caches, Nightwing managed to find all the weapons caches and track down the trucks. Yeah. Robin, he was helping Batman get the infected back to their cells. So here's the thing. Even if it's a small-time voice actor or a side character doing, all kinds of stuff, the side characters still have big roles to play.
I'll do even one better, going, quote unquote smaller. The interactions like the thugs have with each other is just so, like, it builds so much character and it's so fun. I think it was in Arkham City where, they were talking about, it's like, you killed your mom because she burnt the turkey too much. And then the guy's like, the turkey killer. Oh, I like it. I just love, like, I would probably sit and just listen to them go on forever. And, of course they come and it's like, it's the freaking bat. Like, even if those roles are like the smallest you can have in that game, they still build character. Like, now I know who the turkey killer is. And like, now I have a sense of these guys' personality. And honestly, I would love to do that. If it's just like, be like a thug or, a goon. God, back when we could say that.
Yeah.
Look, when you unlock Joker Goon in Lego Batman, that meant something. Now it just means something completely different. But yeah. I would love to do that. Just be like those small kind of conversations with another guy, just standing on top of a rooftop. Then Batman comes dive bombing in and just grabs your head and slides you across the concrete. God, he's brutal in that game, actually.
Because I was saying, like, even these conversations, they do relate through the events of the Arkham series. Like, if you get to the Steel Mill, they were saying, and like, maybe it's got something to do with all that crap back at Arkham Island. You saw what happened, right? Only what was on the TV. He was huge. At first, I thought he was going to start ripping choppers out of the air.
Yeah, and like even interactions with them. I mean, like, you can hear Harley Quinn in the office, like, "Oh, Mr. J, it's you." "Oh, that's not you, is it?" And then you're like, "Shut the fuck up, Harley." And you also hear the thugs, kind of make comments about how the Joker looks better, and they're like kind of coming up with all these conspiracies. Like, that builds character, that builds the world, and that is like one of the most important pieces of a story. You can't have a house without a foundation. So using these characters to build that foundation and hearing opinions on, Arkham City itself, anything about Protocol 10 or about Tiger, and like all these small parts still have a very big role. So that's why I never really care if it's like I get a named character or a bit or a walla. It's like, oh, I get to be in this world. I get to, help out with this project I love. And, that's probably one of my favorite things to do, because when I got to be in My Hero, it was when the evacuation train stopped working, and, you can just hear me. It's like, why aren't we going anywhere? I'm at the beginning of that episode. I'm like, oh, that's me. He's probably gonna die, but that's me.
Yeah, I understand, man. Yeah, so yeah, listen, every time, Jake, when I get close to like a side mission, I let the thugs talk so I can hear everything they're saying. Like, I don't beat them up until they finish talking.
You don't want to be rude, it's like it's rude to interrupt people while they're talking. So, I'll beat your ass in a second. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this, but circle, square, 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 but we can do that later. Finish your talk. Finish your breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so like if anyone here who's hearing this, y'all, don't underestimate the side characters. Okay, don't underestimate the small people. Go actually check them out and listen to them. They got some very interesting stuff to say.
Yeah, gonna come looking for you if you don't.
Like, y'all, stop paying attention to the main character all the time. Go check out the side characters and the other conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it's one big picture. It's one big painting. You don't just, you don't look at the Van Gogh painting and just look at the moon. You can also see, all the little buildings, all the little stars, different shapes and sizes. It's like, you got to see the big picture. And I just love the big picture. But, and so being a part of that big picture, just means something to me, even if no one else understands it. And at the end of the day, I don't think I really need everyone to understand that being a part of that big picture means so much to me. As long as it just means to me, being a part of these properties. I tell my dad's like, "Dad, I'm in Fire Force," and he's like, "What?" But just he's got to stop underestimating small characters. Because they could just jump people. Like everyone jumping all for one. It's like that's what all small time characters and actors should do. We just need to jump you.
Exactly. Like I say, My Hero Academia, the Batman Arkham series, there's always those little moments that you got to pay attention to because you're missing out on all the details.
Yeah. So the lesson here, kids, we're going to jump you. That's the lesson you should take away from this.
Exactly. Pay attention. You turn your back on 1 minute and we pounce. Yeah. I got very heated that last one because I was like, y'all, pay attention to the small characters. That's actually a good one.
Hey man, passion is passion, and we all love passion, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all doing this because it's a passion of ours, whether it be acting or, just conducting interviews. Like, everything all stems from a passion. And so, I don't engage with people on social media too much, but, when they're kind of just saying like, oh, this character's small time, I'm like, no, but that person got to do it. That's the cool part.
Exactly, man. Next up, how does your comedy background help you in the booth?
I mean, I've never really kind of struggled with comedic timing, with how much, with how much I've studied comedy and, done it to a brief sense. I've never really kind of struggled with that. So anytime there was like a comedic part in any audition ever, teacher would be like, "Oh yeah, you really did well on that. That's like your strong suit." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." But I mean, also, kind of going back to how stand-up gave me the confidence it just kind of taught me that, it's like confidence is key. And so, just do essentially. So, I think it really helped me out with comedy as well as just kind of timing, because a lot of ADR dubbing is timing essentially. You kind of got to match the flaps, and so I kind of learned how to pace myself through the sentences, to make sure everything fits. And so I once again I have stand up to thank for that. So thank you, stand up.
There you go, stand up comedy. Listen, I know everybody has different backgrounds of because listen. What I've learned this last year, as we get to the end of 2025, you guys have other jobs besides just voice acting. Like y'all, well, not jobs. Let me rephrase that. I said that wrong. Let me rephrase that. Y'all have other hobbies besides just voice acting. You do comedy, and you managed to bring that into the booth to these characters. You have people like Abby Trott, Kaylee Mills, Alex Lee. Kaylee Mills is a singer. I didn't know she was a singer until I did some research on her last year when they started doing the Your Next movie. Abby Trott is a singer too. Now, when I first met her, my first thought didn't come was I didn't know you was a singer. I got to do better since I'm actually starting to have these like genuine conversations with y'all. But you guys have ways to bring these characters to life in the stuff that y'all doing. So singing, hairstyling, design, all that kind of stuff. And it makes it works in a very amazing ways. That way it'd be like, oh shoot, I do a lot of singing. This girl sings. Maybe I could sing in the booth a little bit for this show. You do comedy. Let's time for some hilarious is comedy style anime making here. And so on and so on. If you see where I'm going with this, Jacob.
Oh no, I do. And you mentioned Abby Trott, and I think I think she did the opening song for Smash Brothers Ultimate. I think she was the singer for that. And I remember learning that. I'm like, oh my god. And anytime you get into a new hobby, it can always be brought into any sort of artistic endeavor. If there's one hobby I want to pick up nowadays, thanks to good old Van Halen here, it's learning guitar. And so I started studying guitars and kind of like how he plays it. And I think I have gotten to a level of knowledge to where I think I saw an opening of Bocce the Rock, I think it was, or like something with a guitar that's supposed to be electric but only has like 4 strings. I was with a friend on a call and I got mad. It's like, why does that only have 4 strings? Most guitars have 6. That's a bass, damn it. It's like, I don't know why. And I'm so just getting really fucking heated over a small detail for like no reason. And even when actors are like told to kind of avoid a musical rhythm when doing lines, I think the number one thing guitar has taught me is freedom and bending the rules a little bit. Because if there's something Eddie is known for, it was kind of just ignoring the rules. I mean, mostly you would hold on to something on the neck and then strum the guitar, but Eddie would always do his tapping and create a lot of, really cool melodies. And I've been listening to a lot more music recently. I'm like, oh, I could probably just, do finger tapping at that part since it's pretty fast and I don't want to tear up the strings yet. So I think any hobby you have, whether it be, video games or, painting, I think anything can be put into anything else.
Of course, definitely. You gotta be a person of many talents. Listen. I also did photography when I was in school as well. But after a little incident in April, I had to put it back on the shelf for a bit because it didn't work the way it out. I'm thinking about going back to it at some point, but I just figured, it'll come back when it comes. But yeah, you want to make sure you have many stuff under your belt. Say, hey, I've done this, I've done that. I'm doing a lot of stuff that, like that way open up more opportunities for you. Because I know what you guys, like I said before, y'all got other hobbies besides just voice acting, but those hobbies can put that into the stuff that you're doing as voice acting, like maybe with the guitar, maybe you could do soundtracks or something, Jacob. I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens, but it's possible.
Or just learn how to do that, like, loud 80s train whistle scream that David Lee Roth does. I'm like, oh, I could probably put that on a creature reel because there's no way they'll expect me to sound like that.
You never know. It's possible.
Who knows? I mean, who knows? Like, I'll know it works when I get a noise complaint at 2 a.m. saying stop screaming like David Lee Roth. I'm like, I did it, guys. I did it. I learned it.
If I ever do Bray Abby Trott or Kayla Mills on here, maybe they could sing a little bit. I'm not sure, but you never know until I ask.
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, yeah, I mean, who knows? It's kind of hard for me to do stand-up comedy sitting down because then it'll just be sit-down comedy. But I think I've made enough jokes to make my point.
Well, I think it might happen if I ask nicely. We'll see what happens if I ask nicely. So we'll get to that point.
We will get to that point.
So it makes it more interesting that way.
Indeed.
We're almost at the end of this section. Then we'll be at the halfway point. When you read a script, what's your process for finding the personality or humor in a character?
That's a really good question. So if there's one thing I like to do when receiving a script, I'll usually give the personality a good once-over. I try not to be bound by the bio of a character because people can express emotions and kind of take on different personalities at any different point. So the main thing I always focus on is the moment in the script. Because, if a bio says this character is very much prone to anger, but then, there's a direction or a scene where, he's actually calm, it shouldn't be throwing anyone into a loop because anyone can experience any emotion at many different facets of their life. So what I try to do is I try to build the physical setting and, the physical features of the character. When I say physical features, like what position are they in physically? Do they have their head down? Are they crying? Is their eyes open? Because emotion, it comes from the body, and body feels emotion, emotion feels the body. This nice little Ouroboros of talent begins to form, or at least like an idea. And so I always just kind of play it from the visual that I create in my head, because I love visual storytelling, and in the end of the day, that's mostly what people are going to be seeing is some kind of visual accompanied with audio. So I always try to bring the physical space and physical world into it first to kind of fuel my choices. So like, what is this character seeing? Is he sitting down? Is the person he's talking to far away? I'm a very physical kind of guy, very visual kind of person. So I always like to put the chess pieces in specific places before I tackle into any sort of character study. Because mostly I'm just a guy that believes the script lives in a moment and we need to portray that moment.
Oh, absolutely. I heard some people would like to know, hey, you gotta, like, when like, this is the episode we're doing, you want to make sure we know what's going on in this episode. That way you'll be able to know, like, okay, so this is what's happening this episode. Let's see what I can do. Yeah. And I know most directors will give you that script. I'm not the director because I've never done this myself, but I do understand how it works by just paying attention to you guys. Like, director gives you out a script. This is what's going on. Let's see if we can try to bring that same energy towards this character that you need to portray in this show. Because one thing I will say is this, there are so many characters in these anime shows who have gone to some sort of tragedy. Batman. Take Batman, for example. His parents were shot down and killed. That's made him become Batman. And, Kevin Conroy, he had to really voice this really broken man who's lost everything. And it's the same thing with you, Jacob. You have to make sure, like, the character's backstory, what they've been through. Is it like sad or happy-ish or something, like a dream or something? And just like put it into the show.
I mean, yeah, for the scene I did with Harmon Andrews and Shirley was, a funeral. And so you kind of see him with these very sad eyes, kind of sunken eyebrows a little bit. But from what he is saying and, how he's standing, he's still trying to maintain, kind of control. He's still trying to be a good figure, essentially. He's a father. And I think it's funny that I voice the father of the Andrews family, even though I'm probably the youngest actor in that family, but that's a whole nother can of worms. But, from what is happening in the scene, from how he is looking, that, it just kind of came out of how he would handle the situation. And so I always find it pretty easy for me because I've studied visual a lot. I'd always look at a character design and see like, oh, this character design kind of says something about this person. Like if they're shirtless, they're probably very have a lot of bravado. Just like, oh yeah. So I always find the visuals to be a very good key into performing, especially like within that moment. So, I mean, that's just my take.
Hey, I think the take works. I mean, like I said, everybody has different ways of doing things. And, it's up to you guys to figure out what way works for you and how the way is going to work for the show that everybody's going to be watching, me, myself included. But, I'm just a support guy here. Whatever you guys do, I'm going to support it.
I mean, yeah, I always find it interesting that every single actor has very different processes. And it's always nice to hear those. And I would encourage people of any kind of field or actor to find out what makes you comfortable to get the job done. There's no one good all way to, get all the information to be the best actor. There's no one way to act. There's no one way to play guitar or drums. There is your way to do these things. And so the fun of the journey is finding out what it takes and what you need to do the things that you need to do. Whether it is taking classes and if you take a class and you pull one thing out of it that helps you and probably only you, that's great. You've got an amazing piece of information to carry forward. And so, that's why I would tell people, never try not to get stuck in one way to act. I always say, have multiple techniques in your back pocket, but, put your main one forward. And for me, it's always building the visual in my head and, kind of just seeing the scene in my mind. But if something happens, I'll pull out like, oh, he's doing a verb. I'm going to verb it.
Of course, man. Like, and I think, hey, whatever works for you, you'll make it work and you'll be able to succeed at it.
Yeah. And like, I think we were talking about, how wherever you land, if you don't make one thing work out, it can always transcend and go into another thing. I mean, like, if you can't make it as an actor, you can probably be one good director or, a very brilliant writer. I hope, just do what Ian McKellen says, practice any art form because you don't know where it's going to lead, but the journey is going to be fun in a sense. Oh.
Yeah, no matter what you do, it's going to be rewarding.
Yeah, no, and there are very different types of rewards for it. You're going to be happy at times. You're going to be sad. You're going to go through dry spells, and you're going to go through times where it kind of seems like you can't stop working. The old adage, "This too shall pass," something I live by. So, pursue an artistic form, stay on your toes, and drink water.
Yeah, stay focused and stay productive.
Yeah, there you go.
We're at the end of this section, then we'll be at the halfway point. Is there a type of character or genre you're dying to voice next? Heroes, villains, chaotic gremlins, or whatever?
I think, the zany, wacky scientist that does, the evil cackles. Like if you hear in my demo reels, I do that evil cackle a lot. And I think what draws me to that is kind of the old adage, you want what you can't have, because because like a lot of those characters are like up here and then I'm just like down here in terms of pitch. So I'm like, I'm going to keep trying because even if I get to audition for it, it's amazing, because auditioning for anything is like the golden opportunity, whether it be for a show or a specific character type. I would just love to audition for that kind of character type because it's just kind of how my mind works, like how I kind of present myself a little bit, where I can be back here screaming and then like, you want some candy? And like like in your face at one point. And I think like I always love the types of deliveries that's like, oh no, you're gonna be fine. He's totally going to die. So like to just do that kind of character would be nice eventually. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I am going to be chasing that white whale. He's my Moby Dick.
Well, they got more still. Like I said, the way the years are going to be going, they're going to have more shows and content for y'all to voice in. So there's going to be a lot of stuff down the line. I figured they should put you in a horror movie. That'll be really nice to see.
Oh God, I cannot relate to this quote anymore after hearing my friend say this. I think I was showing him an audition, and there was one take where is like really creepy and terrifying. He's like, "You do that creepy stuff really well." And I always think back to the Willem Dafoe quote on SNL. It's like, it's always nice when your friends tell you give off the vibe of a psychopath. So I'm like, oh, thank you for telling me that being scary and creepy is like my forte.
It's possible the way you've been doing this for a while. It is possible.
I mean, I'm not going to complain when it happens. Like, hey, we want you in the new Outlast game, and I'm like, yay! But damn it, he was right. He was right about me.
Well, hey, don't tell him that when you get it.
He's going to be the last person to find out. It's like, hey, look, everyone else knew but you, and that's okay, because that means I did my job well, making sure you don't find out.
I can't wait for that time comes.
Oh boy.
Now we're at the halfway point. Section 3: comedy, creativity, and personality. Now, do you find creativity easier on a stage or behind a mic, or is it the same muscle used two different ways?
That is a really good question, actually. I think creativity does stem from the same muscles, but depending on what you're doing, it is definitely like a different workout. And so I think mostly because I think it's easier for me behind the mic, mostly because I'm going to be honest, I don't look how I sound, or I don't sound how I look. I got this very baby-faced, you want to shove into a locker kind of figure, but I sound like I run the whole school. It's like, oh, do your homework. So I always kind of find that when I take out my physical appearance out of the equation, that I have this much more room to explore, my imagination, and just like any kind of thing I can create or do. And I don't have to be limited by if my body can physically do it. I could just, make it sound like I do it. I can make it sound like I got into a horrific roller coaster accident, but did a triple axle and landed in popcorn. I probably can't do that physically. I tried last week, didn't really work out, but I could do that behind the booth. And so I always find that voiceover for me, and just the art of animation in general, is just far more relaxing, and far more it has a lot more creative potential for someone like me.
I understand. Sometimes, I know the difference with you being on the stage, like being in front of so many people, because I know like some people, like, comedian Godfrey, officiating cricket, all that stuff. They're like, they got their own comedy shows and they have to stand in front of people. I think they're comfortable just talking in front of people and all that stuff, but I think for you in particular, I would rather prefer to be inside my own private zone and be funny as hell.
Yeah, I mean, I also just kind of prefer to, play single player games a lot and, just kind of do stuff by myself, So I always kind of just like, just it's being me. It's my own creative process. And God, that made me think of a time, like I was playing a video game with my dad watching, and it was the video game Prototype. And if y'all don't know what that is, it is a very bloody game where you can just tear up zombies, and it looks very disgusting. You got all this like morphing powers. My dad was watching me play it, and he's like, "You need Jesus."
Oh my God.
And so I'm like, Dad, they're not actually people, they're like zombies. And he's like, you still need Jesus.
Oh Lord.
So I mean,
oh my God.
So that kind of backseating is kind of what probably makes me feel a little bit more comfortable being by myself doing things. I mean, that's probably why my parents kind of insisted, like, you have the ability to be able to sustain yourself living on your own. And, 2 years later, they're right, still going strong 2 years later, still needing Jesus.
It's not this that game. It ain't like the same like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood kind of sort of.
Oh no, I mean,
now listen, Back 4 Blood was terrible. Like,
oh my God.
it was not good at all. I didn't listen. And, it's like it wasn't really enticing. Like, it's not like Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 2, the Left 4 Dead series was much better. Did you know how many people, like over like 3 million players, went back to play Left 4 Dead and the whole Left 4 Dead series?
I did not know that. That is so funny. It's like how you make a game so bad. It's like, oh, you know what? We're gonna do your previous work now. I remember I was in like a call with friends, and like two of them, I was kind of just chilling out, and they were playing Back 4 Blood. And it's like, do you guys want to play it? I'm like, no, fuck you for even asking. And because like, you just take this perfectly good concept like Left 4 Dead. I love Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 2, growing up, probably one of my favorite memories. Because when I got it with my sister, like some family was over and, small children. And they were like, you can't play a zombie shooting game while they're over. So we're like, okay, close the door. Do not let them in here so we can play. And, I just kind of see gameplay for Back 4 Blood. I'm like, this is not what made Left 4 Dead fun. There's especially like the characters in the Left 4 Dead series, they're just so memorable. I mean, like you got Bill, I mean, you got, Coach. Oh, I love Coach.
Francis,
Coach.
Zoe.
Yeah, you got Coach,
Lewis,
you got Ellis. Dude, Ellis
Nick,
is still my favorite.
Nick, Rochelle. I like Lewis and Francis. Like, he's like, I hate Iran. He hates everything.
he hates it. It's like, I hate helicopters. I'm like, how about I shove you out of the helicopter and you can go deal with your little other situation. And then you got Ellis just talking about, it's like, did I ever tell you about the time my cousin, it's like, there's so small, lovable moments that really build the world,
So, yeah, listen, anyways, yes, I still play that game like so many times. I actually did a full walkthrough on Left 4 Dead, and Left 4 Dead 2 is on my YouTube page, so I had to put it on there. Thing is, Jacob, I deleted my gaming channel because I was like, it wasn't as good as I thought it would, because I was so focused on the quantity, not the quality of it.
Yeah.
Plus, it wasn't getting that much attention, so I decided let's just put it in one big channel along with the interviews I'm doing. So,
I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of stuff I do or do don't get that much attention, but I still, like at that point, I kind of say it's like, all right, well, you know what? I'm gonna give myself these victories. I'm gonna thank God for the opportunity, and then I'm gonna enjoy it. And if someone's like, you didn't tell me you were in this, I'm like, you didn't ask. Or like, good. Go away from my fancy table of self-congratulation. My self-congratulatory table. So I mean, I always say, just do what you like, even if it doesn't get attention. Because like, if you love it, all right, keep doing it, because you'll find your people, and then you'll build this unexpected audience. So I think it's a good idea for you to like merge it all in there, because now you got something for yourself, along with you got this one big channel of just everything you love. And that's a really inspiring thing, honestly, because if there's one thing I want to do with guitar when I eventually have money to buy it and purchase it and learn it, is I want to do like video game song covers. And I'm probably just do it for me.
I say do it, Jacob. It's possible.
Well, I mean, I do have a guitar neck that my dad gave me with no strings or tuning adjustments, so we are like 1/5 of the way from an actual guitar.
It's progress. It's progress. So it's a work in progress.
I mean, progress is progress. We'll get there eventually.
Exactly. Number 2, what's the funniest or strangest thing that happened to you during a recording session?
This exact story popped in my head. Fucking.
Oh Lord.
So, I know how I sound. And so when I was doing bits for Windbreaker, the assistant director, was assigning bits, and I'm probably like the deepest voice in that room, and he says, "Oh, hey, do this 5-year-old boy. I don't care what you gotta, how high you gotta do, what you gotta squeeze down there. You can do it." And so, because the assistant director's my friend, and so I kind of just give him death glares every time, like the child was speaking. I did it, but it's just like, what is it about me that screams child? I say as I'm whining like a child right now. I mean, it's just that kind of funny thing where it's like, I didn't expect something to happen like that. But there's all these like fun small moments that I don't know what I'm allowed to share, what info I'm to give. So I'm always like, I'll just keep it like as vague as possible. But there's all these small chats with friends in the studio where just like just small side comment. I think for My Hero, there was like the director Mike was like, "Oh wait, this isn't the evacuation train," because we're not going anywhere. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, the de-evacuation train." It's just small moments like that that really make being in the same room with a director and engineer a lot more fun. So there's also moments where we were just kind of ripping apart kind of the script, because I think for I've been killing slimes for 3,000 years and got to level 5, or God, these show titles. There's a line where the bit I was playing was trying to like flirt with the girl, and she says like, "I ain't going with you with that fucking tiny ass tree trunk of yours." And so we just she was referring to his penis. And so, we kind of just kept saying like all these dick jokes throughout the entire session, and we're just having this all big laugh. Look, man, you gotta entertain yourself, man. Don't judge me. Just because I need Jesus doesn't mean you gotta judge. But I always love just the small interaction moments. A lot of like the funniest moments in my life do happen like outside of the studio or the booth, but it is because it is with either people I've been friends with for a long time, like in high school, or because of people I've gotten to know through just doing voiceover. I think some of the greatest people I've met in my life was through voiceover. And I remember a time, this is going to get really deep. I remember at a time where I was feeling lonely, because it was after high school, and I was kind of alone, that nerd kid kind of whole ordeal. And me and my dad were watching Daredevil, and it was the scene where he meets Foggy Nelson for the first time in college, and how they became great friends. And my dad's kind of turning to me and saying, you'll meet people, eventually. Just do what you want. And I kind of didn't believe him, because I was like, "Fuck you, Dad." And so later in life, I met some of the greatest people. I'm like, my Foggy Nelson.
Funny crap, man. That is funny stuff. Sorry. Listen, and also ignore my yawning. I get tired. I was like, ignore that. I ain't sleepy. I can keep going.
Oh my God, dude. I yawn all the time. Like, whether it's, I don't know if it's because of like, if I get nervous, or if it's like just an actual tired thing. But because I know like when I get nervous about something, I'll yawn a lot. And so like this entire interview, I'm like, do not fucking yawn. You'll look unprofessional. So I'm like trying to wake myself up before getting in. You're like, brush your teeth or something.
You're good, man. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny. Like the director was trying to make you do that kid voice, but you have a deep voice. How can a person who does a deep voice do a kid's voice? Like, how's that possible? Crazy stuff.
I mean, I go as high as I go,
And then he says like, "Oh, can you go a bit lower than that? Like split the diff?" I'm like, "What diff? I'm like 15 years older than this little shit. I mean, and I got like 7 octaves below him." So I mean, I remember texting like another actor who also has a deep voice, and it's like, if that was me, I would have been scared shitless. I'm like, well, I got through it, thank the Lord. But I was just kind of found that funny, that situation ironic. It's like, you strike me as a child, and I just kind of sound like I could voice Count Dooku. So it's like that scene in the 2003 like 2D animated where it's like the aliens talking to him, and Count Dooku just looks at him and go, "Indeed." So that was my Indeed. It's like, can you do this, child? I'm like, yes.
Oh man. Listen, every time when I be talking, I just talked to Rochelle May 2 weeks ago. She freaked me out with her kid-like voice. I was freaking out. Like, how did they keep doing this? I'm scared.
I mean, I freak people out with how like I can sound grand, and they're like, "Oh my god!" Like, "Oh my god!" It's like grabbing the vocal cords or whatever. It's like, how do you do that? I'm like, it's talent. So I'm always impressed by what people's hidden talents are. I haven't met Miss May yet, even though we follow each other on social media platforms, which is
she is very sweet.
Well, I need to meet her. There's a lot of people I need to meet.
You can't listen. Keep going to school's conventions. Like go out for a drink or something.
Drinking.
Go out for a drink. I don't know. Go to a restaurant. Go invite. I like to eat out or something.
I know.
It helps.
Yeah, it does help. I mean, we here at the Conversation Podcast do not condone drinking unresponsibly. Be sure to drink responsibly. This has been sponsored by Jacob Shultz. Thank you.
Oh boy, Jake, I believe you'll meet her. You will. Trust me. Listen, I have so many, there's so many people that I want to meet. I still want to make sure, doing the podcast, I still want to hang out and have conversations, go out, hang out. It's possible, but for now, I'm just focused on what I can do for now. Just make these kind of connections. That's all it's all about. Make those connections.
I mean, I remember meeting some of the actors that are like closest friends where they're like we interacted online, and then when I met them for the first time, they were a lot taller than I expected. Like I remember when I met like Devon Oliver, who I absolutely love. He is just an amazing person and probably one of the greatest friends I've had. And he's still alive, he's still with us. But I remember when I took a trip down to Dallas, and I said like, "Hey, I'm taking a trip to Dallas. You want to meet up?" And he's like, "Got you, broski." And he comes out of the car, walks towards me, and I'm kind of looking up more and more as he's approaching. And I'm like, "Oh, he's taller than I thought." And like the same thing happened with Brad. I see him walking over, and I'm like, "Why is everyone as tall as me?" Because I'm like 6'2", 6'3". My parents say 6'4", and I say bullshit. And I just got these people finally meeting me at eye level, because like I'm taller than my dad and my mom, and so it's like,
"Oh, hello, sir. I didn't know I was going to meet you today."
I'm like, I'm back to being a little kid or something.
Very interesting stuff. That's kind of hilarious. But yeah, you never know. Listen, when you be talking to people online, when you meet them online, they are taller. Trust me. You know how many voice actors are taller than me too? Like I was like, oh gosh, they are taller than me. That's terrifying.
I think I saw like Aaron Dismuke's height for the first time, and I haven't seen him in person yet, but he's like, "Oh, he's like 6'7". I'm like, "Oh, hi." It's like, "How you doing up there?"
But still, it works. But yeah, like I said, you'll be able to meet these amazing people. I think the more you guys interact, you'll be able to make those kind of like mutual relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's doing a panel in Anime Frontier with Ben and Miss Norton, a good friend. And so I'm like, finally, I get to go somewhere, and I actually get to do this like thing on my checklist that's been on there for like 8 months, because every time there's an event that's like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to be here doing signing," I'm like, "Oh, hey," like I go to work at 1 p.m., but it opens at 11 a.m. I can just, wake up at 10 and go there at 11, say hi and go to work. And then I wake up, it's 12:30. It's like, okay, get your ass to work. You lost, go to work. You'll try again next week or whatever.
Well, shoot. If you go to Anime Frontier, tell Rochelle I said hi.
I'll be sure to do that. I will be sure to do that.
There you go. Next up, and we talked about this in our big icebreaker, and you're wearing the shirt as we speak. Since you're a big Van Halen fan, how does music play a role in how you hype yourself up or get into character?
Oh man, I mean, How does music help? I don't really use music too much for an acting perspective. That's not true. Let me rephrase that. Sometimes when I'm making scenes in my head, I will use like guitar for like intense action scenes, and or like I'll be listening to music and it'll be fueling my creativity. It's like, oh, what if there's this kind of scene, how would I portray that? But so music kind of plays a small part, more so in how the band Van Halen kind of presents themselves. Because flashback, the year is 1978, and Van Halen's going on their first tour ever. No one has heard of them, and they've like debuted their album, and it sold a lot. I forget, it was in the millions. And so they were opening for Black Sabbath. And so, concert starts, these four young people, these four essentially 20-something kids were just coming out on stage, and you got David Lee Roth screaming his lungs out, pirouetting and doing all these tricks, and there's all these lights. You got Alex on the drums, Michael Anthony on the bass, and then you got Eddie just completely doing stuff on guitar that you feel should be illegal at that point. And so when I look at that band, and like when I see them perform, live through music or whatever, I kind of think like this is like the ultimate expression of creativity. Because you got a guy that is taking being a frontman to a whole new level, a guy that's taking guitar to a whole new level, and then you got Alex on the drums, who, if you actually listen to like how he does the drums, if he wasn't part of Van Halen, he'd probably be the greatest drummer of all time, because he uses every inch of his drum kit. And then you got Michael Anthony on the bass, and so I just watched this band. I'm like, wow, like they're like the ultimate in creativity, because I think there was one point they had like Ed strung up playing the guitar and just flying across the stadium, like one of those Cupid images, and then like 5 seconds later he's being hanged by his leg, swinging back and forth again. I'm like, that's goofy, but it's so creative. So I always just kind of use them as a big inspiration for like, be willing to take things to a wacky level, be willing to take things to the next level. And so that's why I always say, Van Halen is probably the greatest 80s band of all time.
I can tell you, you got the merge, and you got to have some kind of like music to help you get ready to get your day started. It helps to have like certain music, because I know there are so many basketball players and football players. I actually heard that there were some on the Crunchyroll panel in one of those conventions talking about how football, like the NFL and NBA, they use anime music to get themselves hype up and ready for the game. So basically, the same thing that what you're doing with with Van Halen, your favorite band, get your hype out from when you start, going into the booth and start recording your characters' lines.
I mean, I would sing along, as like a warm up, while, driving down to the studio, or, before going in. And, if there's one thing that will always get my, skin crawling and me ready to go, it's just listening to the Eruption solo, because no matter how many times I've listened to it, like 1,000 times, and it still gets me like, yeah.
I think it works for you. I mean, stick with it. It works.
I'm gonna keep doing it. I'll keep listening.
Next one, number 4. This one's going to be important, because I know sometimes it can be a little bit, exhausting from time to time. Comedy can be brutal. It can be. Mm-hmm. What kept you going during the early days when jokes weren't landing yet?
What did keep me going? I mean, the thing that kind of kept me going was just my father. My parents were kind of just encouraging me to go out and do this, and encouraging me to take what I have learned and turn it into experience. And so I think what kind of kept me going was just finding some kind of inspiration, whether it be through something my family said, or watching a special that would get me going to put out the get out there and put on a show, or put on a joke, pick up the old axe. That's the phrase I was looking for. Think, Jacob. But I mean, also there will be some nights where I would get, like one laugh, but that would cause like such a body high. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep going with this. And so I really do think what kept me going during that time was kind of the thrill of that high, because at the end of the day, there's nothing that will make you more awake and more excited than getting a room full of people to laugh, whether it be at like an offhanded comment or like a joke you constructed.
Yeah, that's true. And I know it's like, and I think you're gonna read this. Like I told the other voice actors, like I think that I spoke to Ethan the other day, a few weeks ago. We was talking about, we do these certain things, but the most powerful question that we have to ask ourselves is like, what's the point of all this?
Yeah, I mean, there is kind of a mortality thing to it. Probably what keeps me going in voice acting is just, being able to perform. But at the end of the day, my end goal in life is, salvation to God, like all this kind of stuff, at the end of my time, when I have to stand before judgment, just I want them to know I tried my best. And so that's why I kind of take things a little bit less seriously, because I have this faith system. I'm a religious guy, so the mortality stuff never bothered me entirely. It does get to me from time to time. Like one time when my dog passed away, that just kind of broke me as a human being, and so it's never a feeling I look forward to. But so whenever someone asks like what keeps you going, it's like, well, just being in the moment. I mean, you got to wake up today. We got to open our eyes and, we got to see the inside of our walls or the bright blue sky, even if it doesn't happen tomorrow or, it ends today, it's still a great experience to be alive. And that's what I think a lot of people take for granted, is that they think they need to do something big, or they think they need to be like famous in what capacity. And I'm going to tell you, fame wears off really fast. It gets really tiring, because people tell me it's like Tony Oliver said, like, it gets really boring really fast. So, always be a creative kind of guy.
It's true. Yeah, true. I was gonna say yes. Sorry, I was gonna tell you because it's not, because thing is, it just came to my mind when you said that, because I spoke to Mauricio back in September, and I think you know who he is, Mauricio Tissagara.
I text him weird images.
Oh my gosh!
I think when he announced his recent character for Legend of Zelda, congrats Mauricio, by the way. I think I just messaged him saying "Fi" with FIH. It was just like a photo of his post on Facebook, and he's like, "Fi indeed." I'm like, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I spoke to him in September. He told me, and you'll like this. He said, there are so many actors today in video games, in television, movies, and anime that are just in it to be famous. And that's a sad life. I guess you could gain happiness and fame, I suppose. But I also told him, but that can't be, but that's not the whole point of all this. He said, no, acting is an art. It's something that needs to be enjoyed. You love doing it. And he was right. I telling people, because listen, and I spoke to Jack Broadbent about this too. Like, when y'all go to those movie premieres, I told him, like, one, at the end of the day, it's just a movie. It doesn't really fucking matter. Two, it's not about me or you. It's about the art and the story that you're putting out for everybody to enjoy. And he agreed, saying that, well, at the end of the day, we're just having fun.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
I mean, like, that's like after my first ever session and like sessions after that, I really more cared about just doing it as opposed to just telling people I did it. I never really liked making those posts, but I fucking loved being in the booth and, reading for these characters and, auditioning and, just being able to act and do these kinds of things for properties I love is just such a great experience. Like when it's a property I recognize and, it kind of slides across my table of sides to read, I'm like, this is great. And so And so with all these people or actors kind of chasing just fame, and people always say the market is like oversaturated nowadays. That never really bothers me because every market gets oversaturated eventually. I mean, there's going to be a lot of rock bands. I mean, like there's even a oversaturation of salespeople. Like, you think when someone sold their first vacuum cleaner and made like $200, you think Timmy down the street's like, oh, I'm gonna let him do that for the art. And he's like, no, I'm gonna make some fucking money doing that. And so everyone was becoming like a salesman or anything. And so, like, it never really bothered me when the market gets oversaturated because people quit all the time. And I think a lot of people quit because they're just kind of chasing after the wrong thing. Like, that's why I kind of don't like the words happy to announce or excited to announce, because it's like, are you excited about announcing it or doing it? Now, I know people who say those words that are far more excited about doing it than saying it. I kind of think they're just doing it because I've even tried to find a new opener for that, and I'm like, oh, damn, I can't really make fun of people anymore. This is really hard. But, I think at the end of the day, people like, Mauricio, who is such a great guy. I tease him all the time. Oh, God. I'm sorry, Mauricio, except not really. I love you, except not really.
Yeah. And then,
I can't wait to crush. I can't wait to crush this Tubi Hero X panel.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I was like, and Jack, he agreed with me. Jack also said, hey, because here's what I also said. He agreed with what I said. I said, listen, by the time y'all done with the stuff, like when the movie premiere is over, because Los Angeles has so many big movie premieres. Yeah. When that's over, the next day you guys are back to your normal lives.
Yeah, I mean, at one moment you're in Los Angeles promoting, just whatever anime movie you're doing. The next day it's Sunday, it's grocery shopping day. So get your ass to Walmart, then pick up some Red Baron frozen pizza, sponsored by Red Baron, by the way.
Yeah.
And then just at the end of the day, the kind of fame and stuff wears out, but the art will always be eternal. I don't even need an audition site or anything to play pretend. I mean, sometimes I'll just come in here and hit record and just screw around. Seem like, oh, what would this sound like if I do it? And then I would just, do like, ah, and probably annoy my parents or my neighbors. But you know what? I haven't gotten a noise complaint yet. So we're all good on that front.
Yeah. And I tend to be telling people, Jack, and yeah, I agree with everything you said, and Jack was like, next day, everybody's back in line for lunch. It's normally how it goes. You think, every day, listen, it's okay to enjoy the small moments of life. Jacob, every Friday I try to go out for ice cream. Last week I tried, I think a few weeks ago, I tried Ben & Jerry's. Really good stuff. So
I've yet to try Ben & Jerry's. I'm such a failure.
You miss it now. Y'all have, listen, there is a Ben & Jerry's right down in Texas somewhere.
I mean, because I grew up and born and raised in Florida, and like the number one ice cream place I would go to is a place called Twisty Treat, and they would make some great milkshakes. And I came here to Dallas and I'm like, oh, is there a Twisty Treat? And I find out there's none. I'm like, son of a bitch. And the same thing happened with where I would usually shop, because my family would always go to Publix in Florida. And then I come to Dallas, there's not a Publix. I'm like, son of a bitch.
You'll make it to Ben & Jerry's. Listen, I said they got that new flavor now. They got the new ultraviolet flavor. It has like brownies and chocolate chips in it. It's really good.
It's probably really, it sounds really good, but I mean, like ultraviolets. Our next flavor is going to be called UV rays with no atmosphere or something.
It's really good stuff. It's really good. I suggest you try it.
I would definitely have to look in Ben & Jerry's. I'm just going to call up a friend like, we have to try this.
Hey, listen, after this, go look it up. It's called ultraviolet ice cream on Ben & Jerry's.
That's going to be my first Google search. Someone's going to say like, hey, can you get on the game tonight? I'm like, no, I got to look at Ben & Jerry's.
So, all right, last question for this, and then we'll be at the finale. How do you balance being both a comedian and a performer in a more serious voiceover environment?
That is actually a really good question, and I hope this is a really good answer, because my approach to drama and comedy is technically the same. You got to treat it like you really believe it. My biggest comedic actor, comedian actor combination is Leslie Nielsen. You know, fantastic in Airplane, one of my favorites. And, his philosophy is kind of, just play it straight and, it'll be funny. Because you don't want to, and I think also Steve Martin said this, you don't want to perform like you know it's funny. You want to perform like you believe it, and then the outcome will, just be funny. So whenever it's something serious, I'll just get down all real serious, like, oh, hey, Ben and Jerry's got filed for bankruptcy. And if it's something comedic, but, saying it in a very dramatic thing, like, my water bottle's empty, I feel tired. I'll just say it in the same believable kind of like, oh, I truly believe what I'm saying to be right, and I truly believe what I'm saying to be serious. So I never really struggled with having to balance that, because my philosophy is kind of just play it straight, kind of let the script guide you, kind of let the writer be funny, don't let the actor be funny.
Of course, exactly. And you have to balance and find that sort of balance, understand your strengths and weaknesses. Every person needs to understand their strengths and weaknesses. Otherwise, how are you going to function in this industry, or any career that you choose to do?
That is true. I mean, that's like one of the questions people ask at job interviews. Sorry if that scared anyone saying job interview. It's like, what are your strengths and weaknesses, And so I think, a big strength of mine is kind of older, deeper sounding characters. I feel like I portray dramatic, kind of sonotically how I sound. I feel like I'm a bit more suited to that. Weaknesses, just don't give me any more children, and I won't cry. So understanding your strengths and weaknesses is definitely a plus. But it's also not really that hard to kind of find your strengths and weaknesses for voiceover, because if you want to do a kind of voice or a kind of character, and it hurts you physically to do that, you just don't do that anymore. So it's like, okay, I can't really portray that emotionally or sonotically, so I'm just not going to do that again.
Yeah, I understand. You gotta make sure if this is like, once what your problems are, if you're comfortable on how to solve it, it's gonna work out in the end.
Yeah. That's just kind of the journey of life, just finding new bits of information about ourselves each and every time. And the people who pursue to be artists, put that into their art. And, that's always really inspiring to think about, that no matter what kind of victory or tragedy, someone can always find a way to put that in art. And even not in art, put that in themselves.
Of course. All right. So we're at the end here. So industry insights and future goals.
Oh boy.
Now, so now for anyone wanting to break into anime dubbing, what's one myth you wish people would stop believing?
What's one myth I wish people would stop believing? Stop thinking you need a bunch of voices, or that you need to sound like an anime character from the 90s. All right. It's acting. You just got to be a good actor. So when people tell me, oh, I can do all these crazy voices, I'm like, okay, cool. Can you act? Because at the end of the day, they're not going to be looking about how many voices you can do. They're going to be looking at if you can act. So whenever someone tells me, oh yeah, I can do all these voices, something in the back of my mind just screams, I don't care about that. I just want to hear you perform. Because, people that are vocal chameleons, as I like to call them, they probably built that trust through sessions, like some kind of offhanded comment, or like some kind of,
say, oh yeah, I could do that.
Like, I didn't go in there to do that. I just kind of did that to, like an offhanded comment, and maybe someone listened to that and be like, hey, we could use him for that. I'm kind of realizing more and more now, it's like your natural voice, even if it's the only thing you can do, is more than enough. Because no amount of quantity will ever outshine the quality of your acting. So whenever I hear people think they need to put on a different voice or they think they need all these crazy and wacky voices, I'm just like, no, stop that. You just need to express yourself. You just need to be you, being able to perform, being able to embody this situation.
That's the people that should, like I tell people the same thing. Stop trying so hard to be something that you're not.
Yeah, seriously.
Like just be yourself.
Then like someone who would put on like this wacky voice, like, oh, I could do this, but give me like a stale, flat read. I'm like, okay, let's go back, not do any of that, and I'll pay you to never do that again. And so I just kind of wish people would stop focusing on vocal, kind of like just vocal diversity. There we go. Vocal diversity, and actually focus on acting diversity. I mean, if I were like a director or casting director, I need to know if you can do a dramatic scene. I need to know if you can do a comedic scene. I need to know if you can do this or take on this kind of mentality, that kind of mentality. At the end of the day, there's something for you, but you got to be able to do that, because like I said before, anyone can experience any kind of emotion and like any kind of personality at any given point. But if your specialty allows you, to do that kind of personality, that's why I would hire you, because, you gave me an audition where, you performed it with authenticity, and, I loved it. It's not because, you tightened your vocal folds a little bit, or, you sounded like you have a pot belly. It's like, I just really liked your performance.
That's all. Like, show them what you can do. That's all we're asking. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to dress up, do anything special. Just make sure you're ready to go when they start asking you to do something.
And for God's sakes, don't dress up to an audition, please, for the love of God. I've heard horror stories about people that like cosplayed to auditions way back in the day, and like,
too cringy.
No, yeah, at that point, it's like, I wish I didn't hear that. Take that away from me.
Lord have mercy. You will not see people do business attire in that studio. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's like at that point, you see someone in full cosplay. I'm like, no, turn around. It ain't Halloween. It's July 7th. Let's get out of here.
Yes. Let's just keep it simple. Just put casual clothes on,
Yeah, I mean, nothing too loud. Just nice little cotton shirt. I really do like this shirt because it doesn't really make much noise when I move around. It's nice, it's comfy, and I always wear a nice pair of jeans and just some sneakers.
There you go. And it works.
It does work.
All right. Next question. What skills do you think new voice actors overlook the most when they're trying to get started?
There's a skill. I mean, obviously, the skill of acting is definitely something that I think people underestimate, especially with voice acting. But if there's a skill that I would want to tell people, it is, I definitely do think we shouldn't sleep on script studying. And if there's one thing that I would really want people to pick up a skill on, is imagination. I don't think imagination is something you're born with. I think you can easily train your imagination. So I would tell people, have more of an active imagination. Like if you have a little thought of, like a nice little butterfly flying into the gym, don't stop that. Keep it going. What happens after that? But if you also need like a more technical skill, script study, learn to mimic something, not necessarily vocally, but, emotionally. So I'd probably say, just pick up a night. There are script study classes. I think Matthew McConaughey did one for a long time when he was a teacher in Texas. But, just it's small skills like that. Another skill I think, at least for voice acting, is learn the difference between projecting and yelling. So, a lot of people say that anime is all about screaming, and those people are wrong. When you yell, our bodies are built to yell. Because, you know, like if you have a dog or something and they're chewing on the table, you yell out, it's like, hey, stop that. And, you know, it's powerful, it's loud, and you don't feel any pain when you do that. However, if you try to do it artificially, it's going to hurt. And so recently I kind of found out that the reason that a lot of my projections in auditions kind of sound, you know, iffy, or kind of I just is because I was using way too much room, is what I'll call it. So I kind of imagine projection being like this balloon around your mouth. And so, you know, yelling would go past that balloon. It would cause the balloon to pop. But, you know, projecting is just, you know, letting the emotion, you know, you yell out, you get about like 3/4 of the way through the balloon, but the emotion that you're portraying will fill up the rest of that. So you don't really necessarily need to go all the way out. You just need to sound like you do. It's kind of one of those fake it till you make it kind of things. I only just came up with this theory, so if that's hard to explain, then, well, I'm workshopping it, so.
Nice. That's nice, man. I think that's something, you know, because, you know, you have so many people coming in and from across the globe, and they're trying to get into the voice acting thing, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate this stuff when they start. But it's not. Well, I will say the one thing is this, Jacob. It's not a cakewalk. It's just you just got to take baby steps.
No, it's like walking on sometimes hot coals, sometimes, you know, smooth sailing. There's no cake involved in the walk, all right? There's mild stops of drinking water and then a big-ass hike, you know? People always say it's like a marathon. I always say it's like a hike. And if people ask what's the difference between a walk and a hike, there's a big-ass mountain in the way of your walk. So at that point, it becomes a hike.
There you go. Next up, how has working in Texas shaped your opportunities or your acting style?
Well, I am definitely around more people since I have moved to Texas, whether it be other actors or just, you know, being in different social situations. So ever since moving out, you know, I never really went outside much. I was one of those boys. But then, you know, when I've started hanging out with friends and, you know, kind of talking to people a lot more online, excuse me, I kind of, you know, picked up a lot of these, you know, kind of social, like how these social interactions kind of sound and kind of feel. And in that way, you know, that's kind of fueling my acting, because the way I would talk to someone should be kind of the way I perform to someone. You know, make it sound like a person, not really sound like a bouncing ball going over each word and just kind of making it sound like a line read. So I definitely think being exposed to more like-minded people like myself, and, you know, just being down here and being able to interact with a lot more people than I did in Florida has definitely fueled creativity probably tenfold, you know. Just so I always think it's just being around other people is what Texas has really taught me.
Gotta make those connections, man. That's what I was saying back when I was talking about Rochelle May. Gotta make connections, gotta meet new people. Me myself, you know, I live in Georgia. You know, I mean, like, you know, there's places like Atlanta, you know, Savannah, all that stuff. The thing is, lately Savannah has been bringing out a lot more events coming here, because now they had like these big conventions at the convention center, which is across the bridge that I told you I went to. Like, they remodeled the whole place, like it's huge, and now you got more people coming this way to the eastern side to check out Savannah, and it's like, oh shoot, I need to get back out the house more often to go meet people. Well, I usually just go out for work. Maybe I'll go downtown for a bit, maybe explore the stores or something. But at the end of the day, I still want to be able to make some connections as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've kind of tried to emulate from my dad is, you know, wherever he is, he always just tries and kind of talk to people, whether it be at the grocery store checkout. You know, he says a nice compliment or, you know, a nice comment. He heard, you know, something that would make people laugh. And when he was down here recently, we kind of improv'd somewhat of a situation that, if I remember this correctly, it's like my dad said, "Oh, that's my son. He doesn't let me talk." And I said, "Yeah, it's my dad. He doesn't shut the fuck up." And so, you know, I've kind of just I've kind of just been trying to learn how to be more comfortable with just making a small interaction, just a small note every now and then, just talking to people, even if I don't know their name, and, just forge a nice, small, quick connection. It's something I admire my dad for doing, even though he says he's an introvert, and I don't believe him. But, it's just kind of those things that I've been trying to do just to just build more confidence, because that helps build confidence, whether your joke lands or not, or whether your comment is heard or not. You did it, and that is a brilliant and inspiring and amazing first step, and that's one I encourage everyone to take as much as possible.
Okay. Yes, of course. Listen, make those connections. They will last you a long time. I don't know if are you familiar with Jimmy Kimmel by any chance?
I'm
Jimmy.
familiar, yes.
Yeah, so he lost a friend of his. I think it was the guy who did like the drums or anything.
Mhm.
He said he was begging people on the show. He was really crying. He was saying he's begging y'all, please make those connections. They will last a lifetime.
Yeah,
We don't know how much time we got left on this earth, so we're trying to do the best we can.
yeah, even if it's a small compliment, you don't know what that person's going through. So, if they're wearing a nice shirt and you think they're wearing a nice shirt, just say, that's a really cool shirt. You don't know what that could do to that person's, self-esteem. That could lift it up 1,000 times, and, you wouldn't even know. So that's why I always try to put kindness at the forefront of my mind as much as possible. So, just because being kind is so easy, and it's just very nice and rewarding for other people, and, yourself included. So, just taking time out of your day to be mean to someone is it's garbage.
Mm-hmm. Garbage, and just makes you the bad person in the story. So
yeah,
I always tell people peace and love over hatred.
Yeah, just go out in the world and be kind. It's goated for real. Come on, guys. You just got to go out there and be nice to people.
Exactly.
My instincts will always kind of lead me to, just buy a water bottle for a homeless guy, or, just because I remember I was going to Walmart one time, and there was this homeless guy kind of resting out in front. He was kind of skin and bones. I can tell it's like he hasn't really eaten in a while. And, there's even flies around him. And so, like, I kind of just went back in there because I think I already bought something. And I bought like this 16-pack of those Nutri-Grain breakfast bars. And, I kind of just laid it beside him. It kind of seemed like he was sleeping, so I didn't want to disturb him. And then, I go to my car and I'm like, wait a minute. What if an associate tries to take that back because he think he stole it? So I went back in there and I put the receipt underneath the box, and it's like, okay, that's proof of purchase. And so I don't know what happened to him, but when I went back there a little bit later that day, both he and the box were gone. So I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure he took it. And I'm hoping that helps.
Of course, man. Always treat people with niceness. It's gonna help you in the long run. It will. It definitely will. It's helping. Helping old lady across the street. Like, I had to help when I went to the open mall. I literally had to help a lady. She couldn't open the door. I opened the door for her.
Yeah.
She made it safely.
Someone was struggling to reach like a bag of chips at the grocery store, and I kind of saw which one he wanted, so I kind of just grabbed it out and gave it to him. And at first he didn't think I was giving it to him, so I was kind of just holding it out in front of him for like 3 seconds. I'm like, it's for you. He's like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
There you go. It helps. Even one small good deed can turn to something big.
Yeah, no good deed goes unrewarded. Even if it doesn't happen immediately, it will happen. People remember nice stuff you say, and people will remember, how kind you were, like what you were willing to offer, or what you did offer, or what you gave. Just go out there and be kind. It's so easy.
Exactly.
I'm gonna come looking for you if you don't.
Yes. Let's see. On 2 questions left. What's one thing you love to see change in voice actor or comedy in the next few years?
Comedy is still probably going to be comedy because it's very subjective. So I haven't really kept up with that sphere as much as I probably should. But, with things like Facebook and Instagram Reels, I do see, comedians, still kind of taking that risky joke and people laughing and stuff. So I'm like, they seem fine. If there's one thing I kind of want to see in voiceover changing, I mean, there's a lot of actors out there in the world. I would love to see more remote opportunities open up for people. I would definitely love to see equipment a lot less expensive, because I know, some people just do not have access to that kind of money. And I think it's kind of unfair that, equipment nowadays kind of seems to measure your seriousness and all this, because, an audition's an audition. And so you just kind of need to hear them and decide, like, okay, come here. I don't think they need a $1,000 mic to do that, So if there's one thing I would wish, it's just people being, more open, more accepting of each other also. So, not let jealousy and hate get the better of us. And so I just love to see, more opportunities for people that, that can't make the drive to Texas or Los Angeles, because, there's a lot of good actors out there who are disabled. And, I hear about opportunities open up for them in good markets. I'm like, yes, good. We need more of that. Of course, also, diversity in a lot more like actors, POC actors are great. I'm friends with a lot of them. And we just need to allow any good actor into the space. It shouldn't matter too much. Like, it shouldn't be so specific. It's like, oh, you got to live 5 blocks away from this place. And it's like, no. I mean, we have the equipment, we have the means to be able to, help remote actors and like help people with disabilities. We have the means. We just need to be more willing to do it. We need to be more willing to take that risk. So I just kind of want to see, I just kind of want the community to feel more like a community. And, I want to see the industry, grow. And I'm hoping, with the new SAG-AFTRA president, Sean Austin, let's go. I'm hoping we can see a lot more of those opportunities and, AI protections and, fair wages, fair protections. I'm hoping we can see a lot more of those in the future.
Yeah. And I like how you brought up the diversity part. I think you heard I posted a few things in my story today. So I think you heard about the situation with this black cosplayer. I think she committed suicide and everything. I think you reposted about that.
Yeah, it was very tragic. And I mean, like, that's kind of what made me say the comment, like, you took time out of your day to just bring someone down and somehow you don't feel like garbage. I mean, she was doing something she loved. I don't think cosplaying should be bound by race. Like clothing makes the design. You don't really like a character because, like primarily because of their skin. I mean, there's a lot of awesome black characters. Barrett from Final Fantasy VII. He's the GOAT. But like most of the things that are popular in the community are, Japanese, and a lot of Japanese people have my skin. But I would never trash someone of color for cosplaying a Japanese character, because I've seen her cosplays when she passed. They looked amazing, and she was really strutting the character she loved in such a good way. But people let something so superficial as skin color just kind of get in the way of artistic expression. And I think that's just fucking dumb. I just don't get people sometimes.
And I was like, why can't y'all just leave us alone? We're not bothering you.
Yeah, it's like you weren't even there. It's like they probably weren't even there if they were having to do it online. I mean, like, just, you log into your account and then you start writing a comment and you think you're the good guy. Like, you're not helping anyone. That's not going to make you live a second fucking longer. I'm getting really fucking heated about this, but you know what? That's a good thing. People need to know when they've done wrong. All right.
They need to know about this. And, it's really frustrating. Like, I was like, why don't you even care? It's not even real. Like it's just a costume. And that what really gets me upset is like some people just take the time out of their day. Like imagine this, Jacob. Like people wake up and then they think like, this like skin color and black people's like the first thing on your mind. That's like mental illness. And and I be telling y'all, like, that's why I keep telling y'all, peace and love over hatred. And I don't know if you saw this too, Jab, but I think you did. I also told the others that now that this February for Black History Month, I'm going to be hosting a Black Creators panel. So we'll be talking about this kind of thing.
I would definitely look forward to that.
Yeah, we want, because thing is, when I see stuff that I want to talk about it more. So it's nice because, that way, because this is my first time doing something like this. I'm doing like at least up to 8 to 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to have to talk about these issues and what we can do to like, keep talking. I mean, listen, Jacob, there's always going to be someone out there there's always going to be some rotten person out who's got something to say. But I wasn't there. It's what makes me upset is I wasn't there to stop her from committing suicide.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the toughest thing for me and I think for anyone really, will be not being there for someone. I mentioned my dog passing away, and I'm in no way drawing a parallel. I think this is much more tragic, but I think the biggest regret will always be I wasn't there when she was put down. And so at that point, my memory just kind of started getting all fuzzy, because the thing I remember would be coming home and, she would get off my parents' bed and, you hear little tip taps coming in. And I remember the day coming home from school after that, I opened the door, close it, and just nothing but silence. And, it's kind of why November is a bit of a sour month for me, because it was the month when we had to put her down. And I don't even remember the last interaction I've had with my dog Fiona. And just to think that would happen to a person, like I can only imagine what her friends would be going through, thinking about that last interaction they had with her and thinking, what could I have done differently? Is there anything I could have said, encouraged? And just like the people that do that kind of bullying, that's the kind of people God punishes. And I'm religious, so I say leave it to the law. That's why I say, fucking let them have it. When they pass, I don't wish horror or death upon anyone, but fucking that they need to be punished. They need to know that shit's just not okay.
And I think everybody who follows me, there's a few guys besides the voice actors. They've been following, like, I have a few Black creators. You have like Brandon Bullock, who's anime news guy. We've been friends for a while now. He just posted a video about that. I was actually thinking about doing a video about it, but I think me posting about it is just enough because I don't want to do too much in one day. But I think with me, I think the good thing is I'm actually doing something about that. I'm about to host a Black creators panel in February for Black History Month.
You got my full support. I'll repost the shit out of that.
Sure thing. It's my first time doing something like this, but I think the way the state is now, we're just trying to spread awareness the best way we can. So far I've got 3 people who are down to talk with me. Some of them are cosplayers. Some people do like, a little bit of political content and all that stuff. So I'm just trying to like diversify who I can bring on. As long as we, sit down and have a conversation about it. I think it'll probably go on for I think it's going to go on for 2 hours or more than that. Because it's going to be like a long discussion. There's like going to be 10 people in this panel that I'm hosting for February.
Yeah. I do hope I get to see it. February is my birthday month, but also, I'm just on my phone.
Sure. So, of course, man. Listen, I already got plans for season 2 as the year's getting to the end. So I got plans for season 2 already.
Can't wait to see them. I think you've already interviewed a bunch of my friends. You said like Mauricio, Ethan, Devon. I'm like, great guys. I love playing video games with Devon. He's amazing. He's a sweetheart.
He is, man. Now I got Carly Holt in 2 weeks. Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad Sekai. So yeah, I'm just interviewing a lot of people from diverse. Listen, like I said before in this discussion, it's all about making connections.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed this interview so far, and this format's just it's very nice. It's a nice icebreaker, but you also got like the real deep stuff. It's it's probably one of the best I've seen in a long time.
See, this is why my podcast is not. That's why I don't call it an anime podcast. I want it to be like, because you see a lot of stuff. By the way, I got this Sonic poster last weekend for the convention.
That looks amazing.
This is from Donovan Glover. Thing is, he's been doing art for work, and guess what? I met his cousin, so now Dominic is interested in coming on the podcast with me.
That's awesome.
Like I say, go to lanes and places. I do have plans to go out the country for years. Might find some more people to talk to. So.
I need to visit my ancestry roots of Germany eventually, but that I got years and I've got a lifetime left. I don't think Germany is going anywhere. Hopefully not.
Exactly. But yes, like I said, just keep making those connections and it works. Lastly, and this is the last question: what's next for you? Any roles or creative projects you're excited to share?
That's gonna be a secret. Aside from probably just learning guitar, I mean, I honestly kind of just want to keep a lot of stuff to myself. I mean, my last announcement on Twitter. I mean, my last announcement on Twitter was Water Magician, and that kind of made me realize, like, I just don't like posting about it. I mean, I'll repost and glaze the crap out of my friends who get awesome roles, but it just doesn't feel like me when I do it. But I mean, if there's any creative projects I would like to do, I thought about writing like a soccer series, or again, the cover albums. I mean, I could let you know about any creative projects or any upcoming decisions I make, but it's mostly to, like, my journey. I kind of also just want to keep my journey. It's like the tale of Jacob Shultz. It's going to be a tale of Jacob Shultz, not the tale of Jacob Shultz plus however many followers he has on the social media, whatever. So I think I will keep things private. If that changes, then
okay.
If that changes, I'm probably on a high. Who knows?
Hey, listen, I wouldn't be surprised when it happens.
I bet, just see me like doing a guitar cover, and it's like, oh my god, he did it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I want to be able to see what more exciting, because I know as the years progress, there's going to be so many new adventures for us to go check out. And I think as long as we just, I know it's like every day, I wake up, I just got to stay focused on what I have to do to be successful, and then the extra stuff will come later when it does.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just wake up and saying, it's like, all right, I'm just gonna be a human today. No more
Galaxian.
I'm just gonna wake up and kind of live the day. I kind of just live the day one day at a time. Every day is a gift. That is why it's called the present.
There you go. Yeah, you took the words from Oogway, didn't you, Kung Fu Panda?
I gotta go.
Shoot. Oh, but I'm guessing that's the end of that. But overall, did you enjoy our conversation tonight?
I really enjoyed our conversation tonight. I mean, this was my first interview, and I'm glad it is now such a high bar to live up to the expectations. Because if I do any other in the future, I don't want this comment in the back of my mind where it's like, Phil wouldn't do that.
Yeah, of course. Listen, I always ask my guests if they enjoy themselves, making sure everything worked out perfectly. And it did. We got to talk on some really in-depth stuff.
I mean, you've honestly got a really good thing going here, and I honestly can't wait to see where it goes. So, you've got my full support. You got my belief, something I'm willing to give.
Hey, at the end of the day, we just got to stay focused on being successful.
Amen.